Hello and welcome. This is Puneeth Suraana and you are listening to Galata. With me today, I have somebody that has been at the forefront of both the public infrastructure and the social infrastructure of Namma Bengaluru. For the last 25 years, he's not only worked with government pro bono in transforming policies for the better Bengaluru, but he's also built institutions like Bangalore International Centre, Sabha, Bengaluru Habba and Bangalore Literature Festival. We discuss about his philosophy around public places, how he's been able to structure Bangalore Literature Festival, Bengaluru Habba, Bangalore International Centre and Sabha differently financially, and how they have all evolved to be self-sustaining models of public places. But more than anything else, you want to watch this episode for the warmth, the enthusiasm, and the thoughtfulness it takes to bring people together and to make magic happen. So without further ado, please enjoy this conversation with the one of a kind Ravichandar V.
Thanks Puneeth for having me, and I feel grossly underdressed compared to you, but thanks for allowing me to do this.
Pleasure's all mine. My usual first question has always been, what were the conversations around the dinner table when you were growing up in Yerkad?
I belong to a generation where it's difficult to see your dad as your friend. You know, I mean, parents and the son relationship, the dad-son relationship, is a little hierarchical and semi-formal, if I can call it that. Of course, it's another matter that later in life, my dad and I became very, very close friends. But as I was growing up, I was very much in awe of what he was. And both my parents brought different values to the table. My dad was a banker and a professional in that sense. My mom was a homemaker, but in her own way. I mean, she's heavily into spirituality and very inward looking in terms of what life is all about. So I actually got two sets of values from my parents. One is the outward facing in terms of how you live your life from my dad, and one from my mom in terms of what does it mean at the end of the day to live a life.
I love that. That was a nice balance you must have had growing up.
Very much, very much.
Yeah. With the amount of things that you are straddling in parallel, it's amazing. But I want to get to the start of all of this, which was your early times at BITS, at IIM Ahmedabad. This was really early for both of the colleges. What was those times like, Ravi? What were you like as a student?
It was fabulous. I mean, I was a hardworking student. I did well in studies, so but I didn't get into IIT. I got into BITS Pilani, so that is also a matter of record. You know, I come from a Tambram family, and the first thing they expect you when you graduate from school is either to join a medical school or medical college or an engineering college. I mean, I think these were the only two paths. Going in for arts, humanities and all that was almost unthinkable. So at that point of time, I'm actually misfit as an engineer, but I got into BITS and did well in mechanical engineering in BITS. And BITS in a way shaped me for the rest of my life, in the sense that BITS was a college which was ahead of its time. So in 1973, when I joined BITS, you could mix and match courses and teachers. So you could pick your own timetable and the subjects you wanted to do. And the fact that I was going to major in mechanical engineering became a reality only in year 4 of a 5-year course. Those days it was a 5-year course. So at the end of the first year, you end up in what is called the science engineering stream. Then at the end of the second year, you get into the engineering stream. So at each stage, at the end of the third year is when you choose your branch. So there's a huge amount of flexibility in the way BITS allowed you to pick your classes and the curriculum, almost Western-like in its construct, and way ahead of its time. Because otherwise, most colleges had very rigid schedules and rigid patterns. That was one. The other thing that BITS exposed me to, which is a significant part of my life over the last 15 years, is I was quite active on organizing cultural events. We had Oasis, which was the cultural festival, and I was an active organizer at Oasis. So in some subconscious way, the joy that I got from putting together a set of events at the college stage, it laid dormant through my professional phase. But when I had a chance to again engage with that part of me, I'm clear that what I did at BITS in a way laid the ground for a later day foray into the arts and culture world as an organizer. So BITS meant a lot to me. IIM, of course, is IIM, and IIM Ahmedabad, presumably at that point of time, was at the top of the heap. I think hopefully it still is. And so getting in there, of course, was one level of success. But some of the friendships that I made at IIM have basically been friendships for life, because that's a time in life when you're more clear about what is it that you like, and you meet like-minded people and you forge friendships. Though of course I always maintain the most true friendships are the friendships at school. They are, in terms of purity, there is very little competitiveness. There is, everybody is just trying to find their way. And the friendships that you make at school, of course, are the purest. But because you go into different paths, you lose touch with each other. But the friendships that you make both at the Professional Engineering College and at IIM, these, because your paths cross in your work career, you tend to stay more in touch. Yeah. So that's really what these two places meant to me. Both have been extremely, even including my school, Montfort and Yercaud, all three have played a big role in forming me into what I have become.
Yeah, I could sense that there's like this college fest organizer vibe in you very early on. But tell me a little bit more, because BITS, Pilani, IIM Ahmedabad are still at the cutting edge of whether it's thought leadership or whether it's the way they give the liberty to students to pretty much run things on their own.
Yes. And I must admit that I'm not a great engineer, though I went to BITS Pilani. And IIM at one level was an escape, saying I better get a managerial degree so that my engineering shortcomings don't become very apparent. So in a sense, MBA was a flight away from engineering. I don't think I'm cut out to be an engineer personally. And if I could live my life again on my terms, I would actually do arts and humanities, because I really believe that the world needs more people who actually have a certain kind of grounding in arts and humanities. There will always be the techies, there will be the medical whiz kids who will provide for the geek needs and the health needs and the like. But I really think that the essence of what a human being is comes across when you have an appreciation of arts and humanities.
I agree with everything except that you're not an engineer, because in my research, I was just, this one word was hitting again and again and getting repeated, and I did a Control F search on my document, and just one interview you said programming 18 times. So you're still doing programming, though of a different kind. I want to jump to your startup phase or entrepreneurship phase. I know you had a significant work experience, but tell me more about feedback consulting, which was something that you started in the early 90s. Yeah, how did that transition happen?
So very quickly after IIM, I joined Myco, which is today Bosch. I was there for about 7 years. The best thing that happened at Myco is I met my future wife, Hema, out there. So that was really it was a job. I worked at Myco, but I always had this desire to be on my own. And, my father being a banker, and my father was a no-nonsense, cut to the chase kind of person. So I used to keep on telling my dad that, I'm thinking of doing something on my own, and, I have this bug that I want to go on my own. And my father said a saying that I still remember to this day. He said, Ravi, there are two people in the world. There are people who talk about doing business, and there are people who do business, and the two are mutually exclusive. Those who talk about doing business go to the grave talking about doing business. Those who do it. So that for me was a wake-up call. I mean, it was so direct.
Yeah.
And he literally held a mirror to me saying, either stop talking about wanting to do business or go ahead and do business. So that really was my foray into the consulting space. And I was looking around for what I could do, and I picked market research. Actually, batchmates of mine from IIM Ahmedabad had already started feedback in Delhi, and they were looking to open a branch in Bangalore. So in a sense, my entrepreneurship journey was comfortable because I was joining a group of friends who had already started this venture 3 years earlier in 1985. I joined them in 88. I was to join them in 85, but they wanted me to come to Delhi, which was not workable. So I joined. In 88, I was ready. The key thing about the market research business then is typically, we didn't have cash flow, and working capital is a challenge. Today you have VCs and startup funds. We didn't have those in those days. So we chose an area which is the consulting in the market research area, where clients normally give you 50% advance to start a job. And the balance 50% is given on completion. And that first 50% became very, very important as a consideration, saying here's a business where we get money in advance and we work, and once we have enough business, the working capital can also get taken care of. So the choice to go into market research actually was driven by the capital needs being met through client advances. I can't say that it was something that I always wanted to do, but it was the practical thing to do when you went into entrepreneurship. So that was the reason to get into entrepreneurship, and within that you had to then discover whether you want to do what's called B2C consulting or B2B consulting, and we wanted to choose a niche that we own and there are not too many people. So we chose the B2B consulting, basically helping companies assess market opportunities, coming up with go-to-market strategies, go-no-go decisions, and stuff like that. In fact, the firm feedback which I ran as the B2B firm, our work in the years that I was involved resulted in over 60,000 crores of investment decisions. People saying that this looks promising and I'm good to go with it. So there was a certain amount of pleasure that work that you did resulted in real life decisions that companies took based on work that you did. Obviously, it was not the only basis for taking the decision, but an important basis to decide about the business contours. So to that extent, it was very fulfilling. And at peak, Feedback Consulting had about 150 people across 4 offices, which was doing this kind of work. So this would be the period effectively, the firm continues today, though I'm not part of it. But I was actively involved in all this from 1988 to roughly, I would say, about 2000, very, very actively, which is just 12 years. Between 2000 and 2010 on a part-time basis. And since 2010, I haven't worked.
Wow. I'm saying wow, not to the haven't worked, but the fact that you did market research in the early 2000s, that must have been a whole different approach and dynamic compared to now, the insights.
Yeah, now of course the business, technology and AI, the nature of the business has changed significantly. What might have taken us a month to get data and summarize, today with AI, you can get that summary within the hour or within minutes actually. So the contours of the business has significantly changed from the time we did it. We were, of course, we benefited from the 1991 liberalization when the economy opened up. So in a way, we were the right company place at the right time. Yeah. Because when the company opened up, they were looking for services of this kind. In the license Raj economy, it didn't make much sense. You got a license, you made money. But in the open economy, you needed to be competitive. So a different scenario.
You know what I like about your journey? I love that you went to some amazing institutions early on, and after that you were at the right place, right time with the right people, and now you're facilitating the right place, right time for the right conversations. So I love that arc. And another thing I think which will be one of the insights from this episode is how you are close to the money, you understand and find creative ways to make the money happen. Right. Which I think we will get to in a bit. But is there anything else about feedback consulting? Any other insight that you got about the Indian audience? Because Indian customer is a very different customer.
It is very different. Yeah. What we realize while working, the Western constructs do not automatically translate very well into the Indian marketplace. That tribal knowledge of what it means to be an Indian consumer, what it means to be an Indian business, and how does the Indian culture work, the Indian ecosystem works, is extremely important. Because normally you have a lot of MNCs who used to come in those days and think that they can transplant their practices. But as we have seen with McDonald's and the others, the Pizza Huts of the world, they had to adapt. I mean, they would die in the West having to give paneer pizza or some such thing. But here it is commonplace, because without that, serving beef is a challenge here. Vegetarian is important. So there are lots of nuances when you go to the consumer market. Similarly, when you go into the business to business dealings, the nature of trust relationships that work between suppliers and vendors, etc., are quite different in this country than what you might see from the West. So there's a lot of what I would say the importance of what I ideally call tribal wisdom, the wisdom of the crowd, of people who are here on the ground. So that's how this was important. Feedback was a very nice phase, and it would be fair to say that from 1988, when I became an entrepreneur, I have been my own boss. I mean, till 88, for 7 years, I did work for a whole hierarchical system. But from 88 to date, I have been my own boss, and that has meant a lot to me. The flexibility of figuring out what I want to do, what I don't want to do, the flexibility that it has given me in the choices that I can make. I've been fortunate in financial terms and others, that things have worked out well. But I cherish significantly the ability to literally be your own boss. And the way I ran feedback consulting, I had about 6, 7 senior colleagues working with me at the first level, and of course then the rest of the team was there. My whole policy was, each of you is an owner of this place. I mean, on paper I might be, but in spirit, in fact, I had the accounts of the company being dealt by one of the employees, one of my colleagues. So she looked at how much money we were making, not me. So it was that transparent. So I ran the company on a few principles that you need to be happy. In fact, I used to tell my colleagues and my employees that any day you're unhappy, you wake up in the morning and say, shucks, I have to go to feedback, come and have a chat. If it doesn't work out, I will help you find something else. I don't want anybody to work in the firm as the need to earn a living. You need to enjoy what you're doing. And you might have made a mistake in terms of, this is not what I want to do with my life. Let's have a chat. So my whole philosophy really here has been that people who work with you and work for you, they need to enjoy what they're doing. The moment they start seeing that this is a job, something that I have to do to earn a living, in a way you've lost part of the battle. So this has been very, very important. I had a field supervisor of mine. He left feedback 3 times, came back, and now is a very successful entrepreneur. And each were entrepreneurial forays. He used to come back and say, I have an entrepreneurial bug. I said, go try it out. Then he came back and said, it hasn't worked out. Can I come back? So he did that twice, and 3rd time lucky, now he's a very successful person in the food business. But I like to encourage people in whatever they wish to do. We will find other substitutes. It's not an end of the world if somebody leaves you. And therefore my whole philosophy really was, people need to enjoy what they do. And the moment they don't enjoy what they do, it's time to have a chat. Rather than let it simmer, let stress build up, all that stuff. So that's been really my philosophy by which I have led my professional life with my colleagues and other employees.
Um, what led you to step out? I think the golden age of consulting only started later on, is what I feel.
So
why
actually,
leave such a
my
lucrative-
life-changing moment was my life-changing moment, of course, was marrying Hema,
Really?
and
Why?
in the sense, Hema choosing me rather than me marrying her.
Why do you
My
think
wife
it's a
Hema
life-changing-
also is from Ahmedabad, but she was 2 batches junior, so we only met at the workplace in Myco. Apart from being an amazing human being, we also, in a sense, got lucky. So around 1991, at this point of time, I'm already in consulting. Hema got a call from Nandan, who was a friend, saying that is there someone who can head our human resources at Infosys? And at that time, Infosys had some 200 people. It was $1 million turnover or something. And Hema said, this is what Nandan spoke about. I said, offer yourself. At that time, she was at Myco, which was an 800 crore company at that point of time in HR.
Yeah.
And I said, this is the knowledge economy. And she rang back and said that she's open to considering joining Infosys. And she met the founders, and the rest is history. She became the head of HR at Infosys. So we got lucky. But I actually used that incident with a lot of my clients, because Infosys then, it went from strength to strength. So my clients used to ask me, how do we know you're good at forecasting the future? Because that was my work, to really peer over the horizon. And I used to say that in 1991, I asked my wife to join Infosys. My case rests that if I could spot Infosys as a possible winner, I'm sure I could potentially do good things for you, my client. So what happened is, because she joined early and the stock option plan, so it's a combination of what I would say. There's been a lot of hard work. We have all worked very, very hard. There's no doubt about it. But there is also a factor of luck. I can't describe it, but the thing that that Hema had to come to Myco in the first place, that Infosys had to happen. All these are matters of luck. So cut to 2000, when you said, how did I get out of consulting? So cut to 2000, the then Chief Minister S.M. Krishna set up something called the Bangalore Agenda Task Force with Nandan Nilekani as the chairman. So Nandan asked me, because he knew that what I do and research and all that stuff. He said, will you join the task force to help fix Bangalore city? And I said, I have no clue. I don't know a single politician. I don't know a single bureaucrat. I have no idea of how the city works. But I'm intensely curious. The key thing that market research prepares you for is curiosity. All the time, we used to do studies on geotextiles and AC/DC drives and PCBs and something else. Each is a new subject. And you have to come to speed on that subject before you can do the research on it. So innately, I had this curiosity bug in me. So I was curious about the world around me. Though I know nothing about running the city, I put up my hand and told Nandan, I'm game. Because around this time, Hema's stock option is also fructified. So financially, one was comfortable. So it was not that I had to slog away in my entrepreneurial thing. And I had some 6 to 8 amazing senior colleagues with whom I had a chat and said, is it okay if I only spend half my time here from now on and half my time working with the government? And they said, go ahead. So that actually freed me up to be able to experiment in a totally untested environment for me, which was the Bangalore Agenda Task Force. And the very first month of working on city issues, road and garbage and property tax and what have you, I was hooked. A month in working with government, not that we got some spectacular results or anything, some came later, but just the sheer joy that I got from moving a millimeter in the government space far exceeded the many thousands of crores of private sector investment that one enabled through consulting. So I had that experience of helping companies grow businesses, but getting government and in the city context to move a millimeter in a way you feel it needs to move primarily gave me a lot of joy. And it was not about giving back or some such thing. It was just that I was actually getting more because of the high that, you had the chance to fashion something. And the first project that was given to me by Nandan and then the Commissioner Jairaj of the then BMP was to design how to increase revenue in the city. And I worked and came up with a self-assessment scheme of property tax that continues to this date. Yeah. So I'd made a presentation on Jan 24th, 2000. I remember it as clearly as yesterday. And the Chief Minister at the end of the day's summit said, I'm directing BMP to implement self-assessment scheme by April this year. And then it took a life of its own. And just that one thing, that you worked on something and the leader of the state picked it up and it is becoming a program. I said, this is an area that I wish to work in and wish to be part of. So that actually set me, and which is now 25 years and counting, that was the pivotal moment, was joining Bangalore Agenda Task Force at the invitation of Nandan. And one thing led to another. Four of us were instrumental in setting up, we all have alphabet soups for government programs. There's something called the JNURM, the National Urban Renewal Mission, so that happened. Then something called City Connect that one set up to work with the government. We can talk more about it, which resulted in the Tender Show roads in Bangalore. We set it up in 4-5 cities, and then becoming part of the BBMP restructuring committee, and now the Brand Bangalore committee, which has suggested the Greater Bangalore Authority at the multiple corporation. So in the last 25 years, one has worked a lot in what I call in the hard infrastructure, which is roads, garbage, etc., those areas, and also on governance and administration of the city. And all of this has been pro bono, in the sense that you don't get paid for doing all this. And all this was possible because of the basic financial comfort. If I didn't have the basic financial comfort, I'd still be running feedback today. Yeah. And by around 2010, I worked to hand over feedback to my colleagues who trusted in me and were with me. So today feedback continues as two companies, but it's my former colleagues who own and run it. I have nothing to do with it. And as I told you, I haven't gone to work since 2010, last 15 years. My work has always been in the public domain, public space.
Yeah, I think working with the government is a slow, rewarding process, but it's rewarding nonetheless. Yeah. What's fascinating about you is that I think Bangalore became a space where somebody who's as educated and capable as you and professionals like you got a chance to express in whatever capacity and abilities, but they got a chance to express and implement their thought process. What is the insight, before we jump in to public places, what is the insight for restructuring the property taxes? Can you just walk us through that first project? Because I know that you did not speak Kannada, you picked it up eventually, but how was that interaction early?
Like I always say,
I'm sure the meetings were all in...
So I always say, Kannada artha agate, matad solpa kashta, English less matartivi, shamishi, ashti Kannada nange gottu. But yes, in fact, in a way, I've been handicapped by not knowing Kannada well enough. I would have been, I think, more effective if I spoke Kannada more easily, which is a big challenge. Coming to specifically the property tax, for example, you see, if you want to fix a city, you need more revenue. At that point of time, the property tax revenue in 2000 of the then BMP was around 100 odd crores. Today, it's close to about 4,000 crores. Part of it has come through growth of new buildings, part of it has come through the self-assessment schemes compliance, if I can call it that. You see, prior to the this system of self-assessment scheme, which we came up with an annual rateable value, essentially the way property tax was fixed was a revenue officer came to your house, they looked at your house and said, that looks like Italian marble, that looks like Burmese teak, etc. And they will say, your tax is, for argument's sake, they will say your tax is 20,000 rupees for the year. And immediately the resident protests or the owner protests saying, oh, you that much? No, can we do something? can we fix lower and all that stuff, because you're fighting, you don't want to pay that money. And I'm just taking a hypothetical example. So normally the revenue officer and the owner used to come to an understanding saying, don't worry, we'll fix it at 10,000 instead of 20,000, but you're saving 10,000 per year for 5 years. So what can we talk about related to that 50,000 rupees? And at the end of the day, a deal was struck because the effective rate was lower. The self-assessment scheme was based on a primary, I'm a great guy for guiding principles. I mean, a clarity of objective. The clarity of objective is that the city corporation requires more money to come into its coffers. That is the clarity, that's a goal. But you need operating guidelines. How will you operate? What will be the guidelines that will guide your thinking? And the most important insight that was there in the case of the property tax shift was trust the citizen to tell the truth rather than expecting the revenue officer to uncover a lie. Trust the citizen to tell the truth is the core principle. But like Ronald Reagan famously said, verify. So you design a simple form which can be a self-declaration by the property owner, and that self-declaration is accepted in good faith, but 5 to 10% of the cases you will randomly inspect to see that the compliance is in order. That is the verification bit. So through this system, what we did, the money that was coming as tax paid was higher than what people paid earlier. In some cases, it was even 50% higher, even 100% higher. But people did not object, because when you took a weighted cost of paying tax to the government plus taking care of the people, equated cost of a more transparent thing, but money coming directly into the corporation and cutting off the revenue officer from this conversation was overall worth it in the minds of the residents, owners, which is why it was very popular and worked very, very well. Large part of the city, people went to court to try to stop this, but the court said, no, it's a choice. You can decide whether you want to do revenue or you want to do self-assessment scheme. And over the last 25 years, it has stood the test of time. And it is an area where conservatively a fair amount of bribe money went away as far as property tax goes. There are other areas which continue to remain problems, but there are only that. The other thing that I learned in this process is at that point of time, I'd also worked on a Saral Khata scheme along with the property tax, trying to do Khata reform, which is still in the news today. But wiser people told me, don't try to do everything at one time. Take your small wins, take that you've got this reform done. Khata reform or something can happen 10 years later, 20 years later. Don't try to do everything at one time, because everything might come unstuck because of protests and what have you. So that was a very important learning, that move slowly at one level, in the sense, don't try to do everything at one shot, because there's a chance that you'll unsettle the whole system, and even that one change that you wanted may not happen. So that was another learning in terms of how to get things done in government at that point of time. So the Bangalore Agenda Task Force was for about 4 years, and that was a huge, huge learning experience. And everything that I have learned in the space, the origins lay 2000 to 2004, working with the BATF. My regret is what I know about cities today, if I knew then, because I was a babe in the woods. All of us were babe in the woods, the 5 of us from outside of government who worked in BATF, Ramesh Ramanathan, Kalpana Kar, Naresh Narasimhan, Nandan and me. We were 5 of us who were working on different facets. We were relatively babes when it came to city issues. If I knew then what I know now, I would have actually driven a different set of initiatives, very different set of initiatives. But at that time we didn't know and didn't do it, and I think we are seeing the consequences of that in the outskirts.
What did you learn about Bangalore in these 25 years working with the government? What insights?
First thing, of course, I realized that there is Bangalore and there is Bengaluru, both Bangalore and Bengaluru. That's the first thing I realized, that there are two Bangalores. Bangalore, the English pronunciation of the word, and Bengaluru, which is really the official name right now. What I realized really is that you need to be cognizant and be inclusive in your thinking. You cannot just be planning for the elite and the middle class, etc. There's a whole set of people out there that when you think about planning and making sure that they have benefits, you need to be very inclusive, and whatever you come up with needs to impact every citizen and not just a subset in terms of. What I learned working with government were 4-5 things. One, of course, and that's one of the reasons I pivoted to arts and culture in 2010, and I'll come to that. One key learning in government was that cycle times for change are very long, success rates are very low, failure is very high, and you have to be prepared for that. In fact, I'm a self-described patron saint for lost causes. It would be fair to say that out of 100 causes that I might have espoused in the last 25 years, 4 or 5 have got through the gate in some way. 95 have more or less either been stillborn or somewhere along the way the initiative petered out. So the success rates are less than 5% of things that you try to do, which is a low success rate. But many people will say in government that's not a bad success rate. And cycle times. For example, I was involved in the Tendershore Road, where the guiding principle was the most important customer on the road is the pedestrian, and therefore you need to plan around the pedestrian and automatically the rest of the road will work. So we used to plan for the motorist. Tendershore basically brought in the principle that footpaths and pedestrian is the most important customer on the road, plan around them. So I evangelized the idea of a Tendershore Road sometime around 2006, which was accepted as an idea by the government. The first Tendershore Road, the first 100 meters St. Mark's Road, was a reality in 2015. 9 years from the day it was accepted to be a good idea to the first 100 meters. So that's what I meant by long cycle time, even when there is change. That's one realization about government, which is low success rates, long cycle time, and you need a heck of a lot of patience to work with them. You can get easily very frustrated saying that with goodness of heart I am doing all this and it is not being reciprocated. That's the nature of the beast. You get involved because you want to get involved. And setbacks are par for the course. You cannot be holier than thou saying that I am doing this with goodness of heart, I am doing this free of charge, but the gesture is not necessarily reciprocated by the system. They couldn't care. So you have to be clear whether you want to do this or not do it. You can't then start. There are lots of people who have entered and got frustrated and left. I have stuck the course for 25 years. People ask me, how did you do it? Maybe I'm a masochist. Maybe I don't know. I tell people that my memory is like a computer memory, in the laptop thing. So you have the ROM memory and there's the hard disk memory. So every time you switch on your laptop, it actually switches on with a blank slate, willing to take the orders of the day. It's empty. The hard disk has the memory of what went before, because all that is stored. I think every morning when I get up, I'm like this laptop that gets switched on saying, what do I do? So I seem to have selective amnesia about the setback of the previous day, something that did not work out. And say that today is another day, let me almost like Don Quixote tilting at windmills, go out again and try to make some change. So that is one. The second thing I really realized is it's a tough area. People in the private sector have no clue of the challenges of government, whether it be the political leadership or the bureaucratic apparatus. It's very tough. It's a very different atmosphere from the, most bureaucrats want to retire without a vigilance inquiry against them. Ideally as a chief secretary or a cabinet secretary if you can make it there, but you don't want trouble. So you come with a mindset that at all cost avoid getting into trouble. So there's a certain cautiousness. So you're not going to be very dynamic because you take risks and take some decisions and they come unstuck. There will be a charge sheet against you. There will be an inquiry against you. So there is no incentive to be extremely dynamic when it comes to the bureaucracy. When it comes to the political leadership, they are elected for 5-year terms, and invariably they get elected for 5-year terms, then they lose, then they come back again. So decisions that are taken tend to be more short-term in nature and not necessarily long-term, which is what many decisions are required in the city space. So there's a tendency to this. The other thing I've realized in working with government is you can achieve a lot if you allow others to take the credit. Yeah. If you stand up and say, you're the guy who did this. Now, I mean, I spoke to you about self-assessment scheme, but maybe 10 people in Bangalore know that I was involved in the self-assessment scheme. You have to allow the people who finally run the scheme to be the owners and the credit takers of the scheme. They are the ones who deserve it because they are the ones who need it, because they are in the hot seat, they need it. We are backroom boys who come up with something, serve it up, some of it sees the light of day, and all ideas are not necessarily good. Sometimes we also put up bad ideas and some of them need to get shot down. But if you are willing to work without desiring credit, you can achieve a lot. But if you're keen to be known as the guy who did this, then there are enough people who will turn up to say, he was not the guy who did it, I did it, or he did it, or she did it, or somebody else did it. So it's important to be able to keep your ego aside and say that, look, I care more for the end outcomes rather than the credit business. In due course, if you're long enough in the place, people realize you've been working on this, that they will not know the nuances of all the small things that you did, but they just know that you've been in this space struggling away, and you get that as, all of us do crave for some level of recognition that, hey, good, you did it, etc. You do crave for it. But when you're working with government, allow the government, political and bureaucratic leadership to take the credit, because they need it a lot more than you ever do. So when you engage with the government, you have to care more for the outcomes rather than that source credit, if I can call it that. That's very important. So these are some of the learnings that I've had. And in 25 years of working with the government, I think I might have had about 5 things that I can say, okay, it was worth it for this, but a whole lot of missed opportunities.
Thank you for being so honest and for listing it so clearly. After this, it makes one appreciate the government to a good degree, because it's not at all easy being in one and navigating one. I want to jump to the public space bit, but maybe spend another 3 to 4 minutes on the government piece, because I think with the youngsters, they are either pro-government, which means a pro-political party, or they are completely tuned off. And I increasingly see Bangalore is tuned off from everything government and politics, and Bengaluru is completely tuned in and polarized.
Right.
And both of them have a very different point of view, and that's what concerns me sometimes, that the youth is not really, or I'll speak for myself, that I feel sometimes as a 28-year-old that government is dirty business and the politics is like gone to the hell sort of a thing. So what would you give a different perspective or a point of view to the youth of what is it like to be in the government? Yes, there are dark sides to everything, but what is the brighter side?
See, government has the ability to impact on scale that no one else can. I mean, we can have non-profit efforts, NGO efforts in terms of trying to do something in education, health, and many people are doing good work there. But the government can do 100,000x of the same thing if they got their act together. So the ability to do good for society from within government is huge, though there are constraints in achieving many of the objectives. The key thing to realize, I mean, from a citizen point of view, My own take is most citizens, you mentioned about Bangalore not being engaged and Bangalore being a little more engaged, but in a polarized manner.
Yeah.
It's partly as a generalization, broad generalization, true to some extent.
Yeah.
But the key thing I notice is, Bangalore has more urban reformers per capita than any other city. We have more problems than most cities, but we also have more people who are working to find solutions for this problem. So both coexist at the same time. But unfortunately, it's a very small proportion, and we have not been able to sway the masses that you need to get engaged. I mean, we may talk about citizen participation, ward committee, etc. The reality on the ground is 99% of the people, they are in a mindset of, I pay my taxes, I pay my bribes, the place better work, whether it's pothole free or garbage free or whatever. They are so caught up with their life, both work life as well as their family life and their leisure life, that they don't have the time of the day to engage with the system in terms of things. So I get that. I get that many of them just want to, just traveling in Bangalore, managing your daily life itself is huge. And suddenly you say that, give me 6 hours per week for working for local area improvement, etc. There's a small proportion that turns up, but the larger masses are unable to do it for a variety of reasons, or they don't wish to do it. It's a fact. My thing in all these cases is I do not necessarily expect them to engage, because I understand the constraints in effectively engaging with a system which is quite opaque, and results, as I told you, are very long to come. So you need a lot of patience, you don't have the time, you've got to earn a living, you've got to do many other things. To me, the message would be just the following. Can we just have respect for the laws of the land as an individual citizen? Can we, for example, make sure that none of us ever litter? It's a simple thing. Can we make sure that none of us jump a red light signal? Can we just make sure that when we are, let's say, building a house, we stay within the confines of the laws of the land? I think this is what ordinary people can do, that they can follow the rules of law. In fact, people tend to crib that, this is dirty, but they have forgotten that some of the litter was thrown by them on the ground. They talk about the traffic problem, but they forget the time that they jumped a traffic signal. So sometimes we have to look at the mirror ourselves and say, what does it mean to be a good Bangalorean? What does it mean to be a better citizen in the context of the city? This is all the engagement I expect from citizens. I really don't expect them to find the time to sit in the monthly ward committee and get involved in the larger neighborhood, because everybody doesn't have the DNA for it. There is a small group to whom this is appealing, and that group will take care of the interests of the larger neighborhood by engaging. Everybody doesn't have to do it. So my message here really is, do what is within your control. And if you see friends, relatives doing something which you believe they should not do, can you put an arm over them and say, please don't do this? And to my mind, this change will happen only in this manner. In fact, when I was reading about Japan, and Japan doesn't have a single dustbin. Not a single dustbin. So you have to carry your waste wherever and then dispose it off either at home or at select dustbins. But in the public space, there is absolutely no dustbins. That's the way the society works as a cultural thing. And as a result, the place is super clean. Tokyo might have twice or thrice our population and this thing, but the place works like a breeze, both in terms of public transport, in terms of cleanliness and the like. So this is really my message in terms of, and also, before you just disparage politics, you got to understand politics might be the source of the problem. Politics is also the source of the solution. So if you want to fix the place, you have to engage with the political class. If not you, at least the people who want to make the change. There is no change that you can bring about without engaging with the political class, both political as well as the bureaucratic group. You have to engage. And everybody doesn't need to, but a small subset will have to engage with them to bring about the change that you desire. But my main take is, each of us, if we did what we believe the society should do, automatically the place will become a better place. Who is riding on two-wheelers on footpaths? It is ordinary human beings. It's not the government babus or the government politicos or something. It's people who are putting others at risk by driving on the footpath, for example, doing wrong side driving. We could go ahead with examples galore, building on stormwater drains. We are doing it. You can say it's with the connivance of somebody in government, yes, but you also are a party to that particular crime.
Yeah, if you just self-regulate, I think a lot of things.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, the usual argument is, if I do but others don't. Yeah, but then someone has to start.
Yeah.
Like you started with creating a public place with a purpose. Bijoy was here 3 to 4 days ago, and the episode will be out soon, episode number 83. He mentioned how you were a steward while building Bangalore International Centre, and then, of course, Sabha, and how you managed almost a group of 1,000+ donors, and were the steward between him, 100 hands, and the 1,000-member committee, negotiating with them, making sure everyone is heard, and their ideas are taken into consideration. How did Bangalore International Centre come about? I have come to cherish the place, have been a regular member of the audience, though not a member, attendee.
But that's the whole philosophy of BIC.
How did BIC come about? Was it modeled with some other place and then it made relevant in India, in Bangalore?
So I wanted to go into an area where I was more in control of my destiny. So I call that area the soft infrastructure of the city. The other one was the hard infrastructure. And the soft infrastructure are public spaces for arts, crafts and culture, for conversations. And I said, I would like to do this as privately enabled public purpose institution, where government just is an enabler in terms of giving permissions, etc. But government is not in these initiatives. These are private initiatives, but the purpose and outlook are public purpose. It's for the larger Bangalorean population that we do these things. So that was the pivot I made in 2010 and joined BIC. Actually, I joined, I think, in 2009, but from 2010, I had a very active thing at BIC. So coming now to BIC, so in my pivoting to arts and culture, if I take the last 15 years, there have been 4 major initiatives I've been involved in the last 15 years myself, while assisting others in their public space initiatives. So my understanding of public spaces really is, these are spaces where the community gathers, where a city comes alive, and these could be physical spaces which have regular events, or these could be event spaces held for a short period of time. So the 4 I have been involved in the sequence of my involvement. The Bangalore International Centre was the first that started in 2009-10. The Bangalore Literature Festival, which was more an event, was in 2012. Then the third one was the Bangalore Habba, which started in 2023. And the fourth one was Sabha, which officially launched earlier this year. So these have been the 4 direct hands-on involvement in the arts and culture space. Apart from that, I have worked with others to help create or think about similar institutions. I'm a co-founder of the Chennai International Centre, which is along the lines of the Bangalore International Centre in another city, saying this is a good thing to do. Talk to people in other cities that these are good things to do. Basically evangelize, which is why I keep calling myself a civic evangelist. In some cases, you're a catalyst that makes something happen. Some cases, you're building awareness. Now, coming to BIC, the first of the lot, it started in 2005. So I actually joined them 4 years into BIC, being an entity. It was inspired by the India International Centre. And India International Centre was actually inspired by a similar institution in Japan, which I referred to earlier in another context. historically. But the India International Centre, of course, has been around from the 70s. So it's been there for a long time. So the Energy Resources Institute, TERI, when they set up shop in 2005 in Bangalore, they also co-hosted Bangalore International Centre in their premises and gave use of their auditorium to the BIC members for events. So during 2005 to actually 2019, we operated out of the TERI auditorium in Bangalore, and we used to do about 5 events a month, which were typically conversation and a little bit of music, but predominantly conversation. Now, I joined them in 2009. 2010, we get this civic amenity site in Bangalore, and half an acre site, and now you have to raise money to build the premises. You have to conceive of what the premises is, where Bijoy played a very, very big role, conceive it, oversee it, raise the money, and make the project a reality. It took 9 years from the time we got it. So it's not just long cycle times in government, there's also long cycle times in such private initiatives. Took 9 years from the time we got the site to actually have the building as you see it today till 2019. And I was involved in it from 2000 to 2014.
So the site was free?
No.
The civic amenity?
No. You pay 3 crores for a 30-year lease to the BDA.
Oh, okay.
So these are civic amenity sites for public purposes, but it doesn't come free, and you have to renew your lease after 30 years. So it's a paid for element, but you have to meet some criteria. You should have been in operation for more than 3 years, your balance sheet needs to be clean, your purpose needs to be public, all that stuff is there. So we built BIC. There's a whole process, and I don't want to get into the details because with Bijoy you might have spoken about some of those things. But today, where is BIC today in 2025? We have about 1100 members in BIC, and with their spouses there are about 2000 people who are happy to support an institution like BIC as a public institution. It is not like, say, Bangalore Club or Boring Institute, where members get exclusive rights and non-members technically are not allowed unless you come with a member. In BIC, it's the reverse. It is open to everybody. We do close to about 500 free-to-attend events per year, free to attend, out of which 150 to 200 are performing art events where we pay the artists, but the event is free. And at any BIC event, it would be fair to say 80% of the attendants are non-members. 80%. So in every sense of the term, it's a truly inclusive institution and has become this neutral platform for what I call informed conversation, arts and culture. Our world is increasingly polarized, and places like BIC become safe spaces where we can discuss our differences or multiple points of view in a civilized manner. We can disagree without being disagreeable. And more importantly, the basic ethos of BIC is we respect the audience's intelligence to figure out. So if we put out 2 points of view on a subject, we leave the audience to figure out which one resonates more with them. So we are not prescriptive that this view is a superior view to that view. We are laying out the options out there, and that those options laid out there, some people may say, hey, this point of view appeals, the other person says this appeals, someone else says there is merit to both points of view. And that is the purpose of the institution. To essentially, I call it a spa for the mind and soul. Conversations are for the mind, the music and theatre and dances, etc. are food for the soul. So technically, a different kind of spa is what BIC is. And with this kind of prolific programming, we basically look at saying, if you look at 40 programs this month and circle 3 programs, these 3 I want to try and go. I may not be able to go because of my other commitments. Our job is done, that we have done programming of a kind that has been of interest. And our definition of our target audience are innately curious people. They have some superficial knowledge about a subject. They come to get more informed or about a particular art form and come to get a better sense of these things. So that's the essential idea of BIC. It has turned out to become a very, very successful institution, even though I say it myself. It's been a labor of love. I gave 14 years of my life. Of course, I was doing other things also at that time, but it is something very, very close to my heart. And I gave up the directorship 2 years ago. I'm now on the board. But I was keen to set up what BIC can be as an institution. And that has also, just like my involvement with government, given me immense joy that such a thing was possible in the city.
I would like to double click on BIC. I remember Bijoy telling me that the structure had been pretty much ready, and he was supervising something in the auditorium when Nandan Nilekani came in, and you showed him around for 15 minutes, and you returned back with this big smile on your face saying, we've gotten $1 million grant from the Rohini Nilekani Foundation. What did you do in those 15 minutes?
See,
what went around? I'm curious.
So my case that I've been making in these cases to raise money from people is, in all my initiatives, is, earlier the patrons for arts and culture were the Maharajas and Maharanis. In today's time, the business elite, the people, the startup people, the people who have made money working in and serious money, the high net worth individuals or the ultra high net worth individuals, you have to decide in terms of they are the new Maharajas and Maharanis of our time.
Yeah.
So my case to them really is, you are the ones who need to patronage, because the kings and queens and all have gone, disappeared. You are the new reigning monarchs in a sense financially.
But how do you tell this to them?
I tell them in the language
Really?
that I'm saying. I say it in the language that I'm saying that, look, institutions like this, I always say, it is true that we have lots of problems as a country on poverty alleviation, on education, on health care. Anything you touch is a problem of phenomenal scale. But I also make the point that we don't live by bread alone. That there is some human being is different from others by the sense of community, by the sense of the communal gathering. Our history is in our bazaars, our history is in our festivals and people getting together. So there is an aspect of life that celebrates these debates, these conversations, these arts and culture, and all that one is seeking for is actually change as support. I mean, if Nandan has given $1 million to BIC, he is easily giving about $15 million to other causes. If I have to just do a ratio for just that 1 year, on an average, he and Rohini are doing about 150 to 200 crores of social charity kind of philanthropic donations. And therefore, that overall portfolio for that year, it is really less than 7% that year. And if I take their cumulative giving, it might be even finally 1 or 2%. So it's really, in a cumulative sense, you end up creating an institution that has longevity of this kind. So you got to make the case this way. Even when I had, for example, City Connect, going back to the city hard infrastructure, which did tender sure, the case I made to businesses to get money from them to build the roads, at least the road designs, was to say that if you want to retain talent in your company, the city has to work for the family, including the spouses and children. And unless you invest some of your money in making the city a better space, they will go to some other city and work because this city doesn't work. Therefore, write out a check to improve the city conditions and bring in some professional inputs. So, horses for courses, you have to find the right argument depending. So in City Connect, I was trying to get money for the city hard infrastructure. In BIC, and I think I was trying to get money for the arts, culture and conversation kind of space. And we had about 5-6 donors who came forward. Wipro, Azim, Premji, they came through for 5 crores. Thomas Kailath came through for 3 crores. Mohandas Pai came through for 2 crores. So there were a lot of people. Shibulal came through for 1.5 crores. And there were a few others who came through with other sums. So it was a 30 crore project, and roughly about 22 crores was raised from donors, and the balance was raised from these membership and the member people. And therefore, it became self-funding, self-sufficient. But you need skills to raise the money, to make the case. You need skills to carry the building committee and decide on the building. I don't know whether Bijoy told you, but the version of the building that you see now is the 18th version. It's the 18th version of the original drawing. Overall, for those in the tech field will know version changes. So we are really, BIC, what you see right now is 18.0. I mean, there were so many changes. I mean, we had plans to do some stayover rooms. We killed it. It is today the gallery and the library. So we kept on evolving. The decision to decide as to what chairs to put in the auditorium took us 4 months. And 40 people opining which was the chair they liked the best.
How do you handle, because one thing that Bijoy was so grateful of you, and he gave a big shout out also, was the fact that you handled and juggled all of these massive, well, I use the word egos, but the massive personalities with massive egos, and still were able to complete a project. We spoke at length about this, and he was just at awe of how you were able to negotiate with all of them. I want to understand how were you able to juggle so many different personalities, their suggestions, their recommendations?
See, the key thing in this is, I mean, I think I have a DNA to be able to drive some level of consensus. So I'm not the guy who says my way or the highway. That is one. Having come from a market research background, though I do speak a lot, but actually I'm a good listener. Because the essence of market research is the person you're speaking to knows more than what you do. And that is what you want to get and be able to do a consulting report for your client. So if you're not a good listener, you can never be a good researcher. So I think my roots in market research essentially made me a good listener per se. It's not possible to accommodate everybody's wishes and what they want. But the least that you can do as an individual spearheading the project is to make sure you listen and explain why you are not being able to do what you're doing, as opposed to a view saying where you brush off the suggestion saying, I don't have the time of the day for it. Then it doesn't work because then it's confrontational. You're not carrying the group with you. The other thing that benefits is, you see, today BIC has become what BIC has become. At that time, BIC was a small organization doing 5 events per month. Most of the membership were not even sure what was going to emerge out here. So they had no idea of what BIC could become. Even I had no idea of that BIC would become what. You had a broad roadmap that you will build this 50,000 square feet, there will be multiple spaces, there will be free programming. You had a broad set. But you always had doubts, will income be greater than expenditure? In fact, one of the donors specifically told me that many of our recipients come back and want money for operations. Promise me you will never come back for money for operations. And you want money only for the capital structure. And I said, I promise. And in 7 years of BIC running with the new building, income is greater than expenditure despite doing 500 free to attend events. So it's a great story of how you build a sustainable non-profit, the BIC story. So we got lucky again, and part of it is by having premises which lends itself to multiple uses, and people rent the premises. We do about 800, 900 rentals per annum, and none of the rentals are solicited. All of them are walk-ins. So my learning here has been that if you focus on building a good product, a good service, and a solid brand, people will come to you wanting to know how they can consume this space or use this space or be a part of this space. Focus on the basics. Focus on having a core product that is solid. Focus on services that the market needs. And all the time, ensure that your brand values are very clearly articulated and you live the brand. Then the rest automatically falls into place. Because we, for example, have had left-wing views, right-wing views. We have had all kinds of things. You have to navigate that territory. You can't just be there and run it from one side of the spectrum. You have to be able to articulate. You have to stand up for marginalized voices. You have to stand up for something. And people see that through the programming. You got to make sure there's enough gender representation across your events. In fact, we did a study that roughly 45% of the panelists and performers at BIC are women. So it's as good a ratio as we can get across all our programs, almost 1:1.
So it's a pretty massive project by itself.
By itself, yes, it is. It is. And I have moved on. So
that must have been harder.
And all this was, of course, again, pro bono, in the sense I did it for the love of thing, because as I told you, we're financially comfortable, so you didn't. But it was important to institutionalize BIC. It was important that BIC continues as an institution. So Vikram Bhatt, who came in and has done a 2-year stint, he's moving on, did an amazing job. In fact, the transition from me to Vikram, I know you could call my phase literally like a family managed concern, because I was part of the board and I was part of the system, to someone which was professionally managed with Vikram. It went pretty seamlessly, because Vikram also was extremely good in what he brought to the table. And consequently, we have showcased that it is possible for founders, in a sense, to walk away and pass on the management to professionals, and the institutional ethos, etc., are still maintained. That is really what we have been able to show out here.
Yeah, I agree. So you have structured the 4 organizations financially in a very different way, in which they are pretty much independent, without relying on corporate or an anchor firm that's supporting it. Can you walk me through how you have structured all 4 of them and how you juggle with them as well?
Yeah. So we spoke about BIC, and to quickly recap on BIC, the capital cost was covered by a set of donors and by members, and the running costs are covered by daily operations of income being greater than expenditure. That is the BIC model. The total capital cost was of the order of 30 crores, and it was funded by donors as well as members to meet the capital cost. The annual budget of the Bangalore International Centre is of the order of 5 to 6 crores, and we are sustainable in the sense that the income is greater than the expenditure in running BIC. So therefore, it's a self-sustaining non-profit venture. Initially needed external capital to make it happen, but subsequently runs on its own steam. That is the BIC model. The Bangalore LitFest model is, we have built about 100 to 120 friends of BLF who come through with donations from 1 to 5 lakhs per year. The Bangalore LitFest costs around 3 crores per year to run. And the Bangalore LitFest is India's largest community funded festival. It is a brandless festival. So in the last 13 editions, there's not a single brand. It's a bunch of high net worth individuals who have donated to keep this as a community free to attend festival. Close to about 25,000 people attend it over 2 days. This year it's on December 6th and 7th, and it's fully funded by the Friends of BLF. So it's a very different model, which is what I would call a little more retail funding, where you go to a large number of people and get small amounts of money. It has the advantage that nobody owns the festival. And the core team that works on the festival is all volunteers. And I've used this expression earlier, that it's a college festival on steroids, the Bangalore Lit Fest. So you have that whole college festival energy in the case of BLF. Till recently, we always used to do it in hotels. Now, to make it more inclusive, we are going to Freedom Park this year, because we wanted to go to more public space rather than a 5-star hotel, which was the past way we used to do this. So that's the second model, the Bangalore Literature Festival. The third one is the Bangalore Habba. So the Bangalore Habba, the third edition is from January 16 to 25th of 2026, and it will feature about 250 events over 10 days across 12 genres, and all events will be free to attend. So that is basically the model of the Bangalore Habba. Unlike the Bangalore Lit Fest, the Bangalore Habba is supported by corporates and foundations, because the Bangalore Habba costs about 12 crores to run one particular event. The previous event we ran over 16 days, it was about 8.5 crores in 2024. The third edition is in Jan, and we are looking at a pretty large number. So we have to go to corporate sponsors and to philanthropic foundations saying that the city needs a festival, just like you have the Kochi Biennale or the Serendipity in Goa or the Edinburgh Fringe, that city brand, city identity, pride in the city comes through a celebration of this kind. You make it inclusive by making it free for the entire city to attend, with again Freedom Park as the fulcrum where a lot of the events will happen. We have 12 other venues. So there the funding model is to convince corporates and foundations that you could be a good corporate citizen if you helped the city realize some of events of this kind. It's not fully justifiable in terms of the way you might do during an IPL match or a cricket match where the eyeballs are significantly higher. Here the turnout is roughly about 2 lakh people come over these 10 days to consume it. It's not insignificant, but still we have found that there are people with these corporate entities and foundations with their heart in the right place, that they believe that supporting this is good. So that's been the model when it comes to the Bangalore Habba. The last one is really Sabha. So Sabha has an interesting backstory. So Sabha belongs to RBANMS Educational Charities. So there was this Rai Bahadur Annaswamy Mudaliar, Arcot Narayan Swamy Mudaliar, who lived about 150, 160 years ago. I mean, he was the one who also built the High Court in his times. He was very rich, and he endowed a set of places to run schools and colleges. So one of those spaces, which was 160 years old, is what is today's Sabha. It used to be called the CVS school or the Sabha Tamil school locally, and it was in disuse for the last 14, 15 years. So the place had actually deteriorated and it had no use. So I was actually trying to get philanthropists to adopt Sabha and do it, but it didn't work out in terms of trying to get them to do it. So my wife and I, we sat down and we said that for 25 years, I mean actually because this project took about 2.5 years, so I would say for 23 years, we have been active with my involvement on a time basis. I mean, I gave my time for causes, city as well as arts and culture. Money came from others. I said, let's do something which is our contribution financially as well as the know-how. So Sabha is the first, so we set up something called the Amini Trust, which is our family trust. And we said, we will do 3 to 4 public spaces that we will create in the city as our own financial capital contribution for the city, as opposed to raising it from others. Because we were both keen that we do a certain amount of philanthropic funding or charity or whatever you want to call it during our lifetime. We don't want to leave it to the children that spend a certain proportion for these causes. We have, God willing, we have been financially comfortable. So we said, why don't we do something? And I said, look, having spent so much time in this space, I would really like to create public spaces because that's where the city comes alive. And can we do our spending? I mean, we are supporting education causes and we are supporting some of the other causes, but as our primary cause where we put serious money, our money is not great shakes like some of the other multi-billionaires, but within what we have got, can we pick and choose and pick the idea of public spaces? So the Sabha is really our family initiative where we have spent our own money.
So it's 100%
funded by the family. And
what does it take?
Yeah, so it took us 2.5 years and it took us 8 crores to fix that place. And normally, you know, the conservation and restoration projects of old buildings are about 40% more expensive than a new building.
Why this?
So because you have to follow old traditional practices, whether it be Madras terrace or lime plaster finish, and the structure is tottering, you need to strengthen the structure, but you got to stay true to the original form. So there are lots of constraints, But you're also, it's a, a modern look of a traditional building. The same building, for example, if it was a brand new building built today, as the same looking building, but built with just modern material from scratch, it'll be 5.5 crores. That's the reality of conservation and restoration. It is more expensive. And consequently, Sabha, we are now running it also. I mean, we will run it for the next 15 years. The property will go back to RBNMS. It doesn't belong to us. It belongs to the educational charity. So it will go back to us. But we want to run it more as an arts, crafts and culture space. They will get an enhanced asset at the end of this. But we will run it in the interim as a public space for Bangalore. And we are running it since April. And in the last 5 months of operation, again, because this is an article of faith with me, the income needs to be greater than expenditure. If income is not greater than expenditure, you have failed. And at the end of 5 months of operation, my income is marginally greater than expenditure. So I'm convinced that we have a sustainable model. The difference of Sabha vis-a-vis BIC, while BIC does many free to attend programs, Sabha's free to attend programs are far fewer. It will be maybe, we just do once a quarter, we do 2 days of open house, and that is free to the public. Sabha is more enabled arts and culture, so people rent the space, they do arts and culture, they ticket the event and make it available to the public. So Sabha is more a ticketed space where these events are done by others, but we give them the space at concessional rates. So we are enabling arts and culture by giving it at a concessional rate. They ticket it and do the show. And my offer to people really is, if your event is free to the public, I will give you my space free. But if you're ticketing it, then I need a certain income too. Secondly, it supports people in arts, crafts and culture by giving them a space in the center of the city at relatively concessional rates such that their art is able to flourish. That's what a place like Sabha does. So all the 4 initiatives are quite distinctly different in their own ways. Of course, all of them require money to be raised. And one of the competences that you need if you're getting into this space is the ability to fundraise. That is necessary. Because sans the money, we might have the best of intentions, but to pull it off will require people to come forward and contribute. And some of the spaces have also worked very well with volunteer energy. There's volunteer energy in BIC, in the program committee, in the executive committee, where people give their time for BIC. The entire Bangalore Literature Festival is on the volunteer model. The Bangalore Habba has a reasonable amount of volunteers. So volunteer energy is also extremely important in getting some of these things done.
Yeah, I think that is something that I will for sure explore in the next podcast. How do you find volunteers? How do you interest upon them? And what is it like having, and these are not mostly college students is what I gather, these are actual professionals who are giving time. I want to understand your latest, so you're part of the committee that revamped BBMP. And you have the 5 parts of Bengaluru. Can you walk us through that? What was it like to rethink Bengaluru?
So this has been a 7-year journey, reimagining the governance and administration of a city like Bangalore. And what we realize is Bengaluru in its current form, 1 BBMP, 721 square kilometers, multiple parastatal agencies like BWSSB, BESCOM, BDA, BMTC, BMRCL, who are state government entities, while the corporation are people who are elected as corporators and mayors and deputy mayors. The twain do not meet, as a result of which the place is unmanageable, ungovernable. That's the high level take. So the contours of the solution that we suggested had 2 parts to it. One is a decentralization effort through 5 corporations that the government has selected, so that each corporation, if you leave out the central, which is at 78 square kilometers, the rest are around 150, 170 square kilometers. We believe that through political decentralization and having 5 mayors, deputy mayors and individual corporators for a corporation looking at a smaller area, they will be closer to the people and more responsive to people's needs than the one large BBMP monolith that we had earlier. So the idea of political decentralization is one idea there. The second idea is an overarching layer called the Greater Bangalore Authority, where all the multiple agencies of Bangalore, whether they are parastatals under the state government or they are these 5 corporations which have the elected bodies, all of them come under one umbrella so that we have all the agencies working in sync for a desired outcome. It's basically a conductor. The GBA is like a music conductor. In the absence of the conductor, you have noise. You have a lot of people playing their own instruments and there's cacophony. But with a GBA-like entity, you have a greater chance of some music happening because you have a conductor in charge, which is basically giving roles and parts that different people have to play at different points of time. So that's the essential idea. At least one of these 5 corporations will be an outlier, will be pothole free and garbage free, which will put pressure on the other 4 corporations to improve their act. There will be people coming forward to come up with suggestions to improve their corporation through more citizen participation. One is hoping for that. And at the aggregate level, because you have all the agencies coming together, which has never happened in the past, hopefully better coordination and integration between the agencies than we have seen in the past. All this is hope. What will happen, only the future will tell.
Yeah, let's hope for a Bangalore that we deserve.
Yes.
I want to get to the rapid fire questions.
Sure.
What's a book that you recommend everyone to read?
Actually, the Abraham Verghes's Covenant of Water, it's a fiction book, but I found it absolutely mesmerizing in the fiction category. And in the non-fiction category, I have been basically, there are 2 books that have really resonated with me. One is Sapiens, and the other one is The Wisdom of the Crowds. That there is actually more wisdom in the crowds than among select experts is the essential thesis of the second book.
Yeah. What's a recent piece of content that you've consumed? Audio, video, podcast, newsletter, blog, documentary?
I know, because I need to unwind, I do tend to consume a fair amount of OTT serials. One which I have recently seen and quite enjoyed is an Apple series called Slow Horses.
Yeah. What's a recent piece of gizmo, gadget, software that you've bought under 10,000 rupees that you'd recommend?
I'm just trying to remember. The last gadget equivalent that I bought really was earplugs, which would come under the below 10,000 range, because I really didn't go for the very high end, so that when I'm walking, I'm able to listen to podcasts like the Galata podcast.
The plug. What would be a challenge that you could throw out to the audience? It could be a 1-week challenge with a hashtag that they can try and give a shot to, and then make a post on it as well and tag us.
It would be the one thing in the neighborhood that you would like to fix.
This is taken already by Bijoy.
Oh, it's been taken by Bijoy. My God, that's the problem with following people like him. See, because since that's the area that I have been working on, the challenge I would really be is how can I be a better citizen tomorrow compared to the citizen I was in the past? Ask yourself, what can I personally do better, and as a result of which the city will become better? I think that would be my challenge to you.
And the hashtag?
Better me.
Okay, hashtag better me. Please do tag both of us and make a post or make a story. Final question, Ravi. You've been involved in so many projects in private enterprises, public enterprises, across social infrastructure, public infrastructure, soft side of things, hard side of things. What is the impact you seek to make?
I don't know, I've really never thought of impact, because on scale, I'm not even sure the things I've been involved in has had enough reasonable scale, as venture capitalists tend to call it. But what I think I have done over the last 25 years specifically is I have, I think, in some ways made Bengaluru a marginally better space, for sure. There, I mean, I could point to some 4 or 5 things that have happened because of one's involvement, obviously with the support of people in government. And on the arts and culture side, I think at this point of time, I would think that my legacy and my epitaph would be the work that I have done at BIC, because that's an institution that over the 14 years now has 16 years from 2000 when we started it, has stood the test of time and seems to be going from strength to strength. So that's something that I'm particularly believe that that's an institution that is here to stay and will have relevance even in the years to come.
On that note, go and make some Galata. Thank you, Ravi, for being on.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much.